When organizations are seeking out PM software with AI features, do they actually have an idea of what they want to get from them?
It's a mixed bag out there. We're definitely leading with a bit more of a competitive FOMO that executives are having. There's a lot of marketing. Vendors are definitely rushing to catch the AI wave because there is this hype and demand that is going around. But we are slowly moving toward a more strategic intent with AI.
What needs to be in place before a team or an organization can actually benefit from AI features in project management software? And what, in your mind, are like the foundational pieces that help teams and organizations accelerate towards the ROI?
There's two pretty big considerations that I think companies of all types and all sizes, all industries, all levels of maturity should be taking into consideration. And that's your technical readiness and your cultural readiness.
Still, that looming elephant in the room over the past, few months has been like agentic AI. Agentic features are making their way into project management software. Where does that take us, and what does it mean for us in the future? Future us.
Current us, it's a little chaotic. Future us, I'm really excited for.
Okay, today we are talking about the increasing demand for AI-enhanced features within project management software, what folks want from those features, and what businesses and teams of various sizes need to have in place to achieve their goals. Back in the virtual studio with me today is Olivia Montgomery, Associate Principal Analyst for Project Management at Capterra. Olivia is a former PMO lead, a project management professional, a prolific speaker, and just the best kind of nerd when it comes to research-backed insights on project management, technology strategies, and the human side of leadership. She's also just published her latest research paper, Capterra's 2025 Project Management Software Trends Survey, which reveals a shift in how companies are choosing and using project management tools. And that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today. Olivia, thank you for coming back in the studio and joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. We've got some hot topics to hit.
Yeah, we're going to get spicy today. And, for folks who have listened to the podcast for a while now, Olivia is just a fan favorite. You're one of my favorite recurring guests. We were just in the green room jamming about linguistics. And then we realized we're like, actually, linguistics and the liberal arts and LLMs and AI, it all fits together. So we're going to go a lot of different spots. We do tend to go down some rabbit holes, and I do hope that we do that. But just in case, here is my roadmap that I've sketched out for us today. So to start us off, I wanted to just get one big burning question out of the way, just that uncomfortable but hyper relevant question that everyone wants to know the answer to. And then I'd like to zoom out from that and talk about three things. First, I wanted to talk about what is needed in order for organizations to truly take advantage of AI features within project management software. And then I'd like to deep dive into what AI features actually look like in practice and how to measure whether or not they're actually working or how they're being used. And then lastly, I thought maybe we could just talk about the impact, near term and long term, of some of the AI features in project management software and elsewhere in the way that we collaborate, and how that's going to impact project-based work. How does that sound to you?
I am ready to go. Let's do it.
Awesome. Let's start with the one hot question then. In your recent research paper, you've noted that 55% of all project management software buyers are now prioritizing AI features. That's probably not surprising to most of our listeners, given the pressure for businesses to do more using AI. But when organizations are seeking out PM software with AI features, do they actually have an idea of what they want to get from them? Or are a majority of these buyers just kind of following a mandate to, do AI stuff?
It's a mixed bag out there. We're definitely leading with a bit more of a competitive FOMO that executives are having. There's a lot of marketing. Vendors are definitely rushing to catch the AI wave because there is this hype and demand that is going around. But we are slowly moving toward a more strategic intent with AI. We are definitely, the kind of initial sparkle of it has kind of worn off, and we are starting to see a bit more what these tools actually can do, what they can't do, how teams use them, when, why, where, and we're getting to the tougher questions. But they're still pretty heavily driven by this competitive FOMO. And that is definitely driven by, I don't know if you've heard the news, but the spending for AI infrastructure, hardware, software, data centers for the US has surpassed consumer spending.
Wow.
So for the first time in history, The US GDP is being grown by AI investments by businesses, not consumer spending. So that should tell you a lot about where the conversation is going. These investments are also getting billion-dollar marketing campaigns behind them. And so that's what we're seeing, and it's a big driver of this competitive FOMO. And there are a lot of executives and business leaders that are excited. They hear about this new tech that works really fantastically and they want it, of course. Now our hands are getting into it and we're kind of starting to see like, oh, okay, so marketing doesn't always line up with the technical capabilities that we see. And then the technical capabilities don't always line up with what your people and your team are skilled and trained and willing to do.
Hmm.
So there's definitely a disconnect that's, we're right in the middle of. And I'm sure probably everybody listening is feeling some kind of pressure some way about this.
I thought it was interesting that you brought up the economics of it because I hadn't really thought about it. But in some ways, when you're talking about that level of investment, like surpassing consumer spending in terms of how economies are making money, imagine the pressure that these companies are under. They've invested in infrastructure, they're spending. I remember, we were all taught that like, oh, cloud storage is cheap now. Yeah, not when it's petabytes of data. You know what I mean? Like there's this pressure that filters down. And if you're a marketer, in the software space, I salute you actually, because there's a lot of pressure to just, sell as many licenses as you can because there's this immense investment that organizations have made and are not, earning back right now. Like they're not profitable business right now. They're in an investment stage. And there is this pressure to go out there and, maybe even find the use cases because we're in this like spot where we haven't really started with the use cases. We were like, this has potential to revolutionize and change everything. And I think that's like, it's an interesting lens to put on it. It's actually not what I thought you were going to say, but it's this top down pressure that trickles down into, okay, yes, I also now feel competitive pressure to be buying, AI enhanced project management software because, that's like buying a phone that doesn't have a fax machine in 1992. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, of course, I
Exactly.
need my multifunction, state of the art thing, whether or not I send faxes. It's because that's what everyone else has got. But I do like that idea that now we're in that spot where it's like, this is when we're figuring it out. And it's okay if you've gone out and bought AI enhanced, software of any kind, because that'll help us figure out what we can do with it. But it does take that mindset and not that like, oh, magic button, we hit install and we're good now. Yeah.
Yeah,
We figured
yeah,
it out.
exactly. We're starting to see that too. I was very proud in the survey. We had the results that security came as like the top priority for buyers for PM software, and that's super exciting to me. It usually is functionality, which of course makes sense. So to see security bump up for the first time that we've seen as the top priority is fantastic. That's telling me that teams are realizing like, okay, this AI of any type that you're using is increasing the surface attack level that you have. Especially depending on if you're using external LLMs. There's a big difference between AI features that are, in your current system that they just rolled out and they're like, hey, we're like helping you with helpful suggestions or some extra autocomplete, or we'll help you build a workflow a bit better. That's a little less risky than your employees using external LLMs to synthesize project meeting notes and all of that. So I'm definitely excited and proud of our community for
Mhm.
putting security at the top of the list.
That's actually a really interesting one, and it also speaks a bit, I think, at least from my perspective, I think it speaks to, like, the speed to maturity, right? Like, I think there's a lot of things that have disrupted us, in the digital space and in technology over the past couple of decades, but we've always been really slow to kinda, like, figure out the important stuff, and to, like, hear that, I'm like, "Okay, well, yeah, if privacy, data security, it's getting taken seriously now, and it's still pretty early days in the grand scheme of things." Like, that's important. It also speaks to how they're using it because, to your point, I was never really that fussed about, the data privacy around like autocorrect. I was like, "That's probably fine. You now know that whatever, I cannot spell or type on a touchscreen for the life of me, right?" And then that's fine. But when I'm punching in, all of my, project data, my client information, like business reports, it becomes a lot more important. And what I like about it is it's almost like I don't wanna say speed dampener, but, like, it's almost like now's the right time before we get too far too fast, shooting from the hip and throwing data everywhere and then going, whoops. Whereas now it's
Mhm.
kind of like, yeah, it's important. And also maybe it speaks to that in business competition, right? It's like, okay, I don't want to share all my information. We hear about building proprietary LLMs and stuff. I'm sure we'll get into it. But it's really interesting that, data and privacy showed up as that much of a priority.
I know, it's great. So proud of us.
For me, it speaks to this foundational stuff. And I wondered if we can zoom out a bit because not every organization is ready to just wake up one day and go, hey, let's buy some project management software that has all the AI features we want. Um, Sometimes things need to be in place first. And I thought maybe I'd ask you, what needs to be in place before a team or an organization can actually benefit from AI features in project management software? And what in your mind are the foundational pieces that help teams and organizations accelerate towards the ROI of AI?
Yeah, absolutely. There's taking a few moments, any moments to pause and be like, okay, are we ready? Are we ready to do this? Yes, I'm ready to buy. Yes, I'm ready for the business to inject AI and see all the gains that we can get. But when are we actually ready? And there's two pretty big considerations that I think companies of all types and all sizes, all industries, all levels of maturity should be taking into consideration, and that's your technical readiness and your cultural readiness. So, diving in first, like the technical readiness, do you have enough clean, structured data? AIs, whether you're using machine learning for predictive analytics or even your LLMs to help you generate, reports and synthesize data, those need vast amounts of really high quality data to be able to give you an output that you're going to be happy with. So you need to double check. Do we have this data? Where is this data? What's the quality of it? Where are we ready to share that data? Is it good enough to get us insights? You want to audit your existing tools before you unleash an AI because it could be that you're unleashing redundant capabilities. Another tool could already have it. And you also, when you do a tools audit, you could also flush out any shadow IT that might be happening. If you have employees that have rushed ahead and maybe they're using tools that you're unaware of for, while they're at work for your business, you want to know about that. And so doing a full audit sweep of I advise your entire infrastructure, your entire environment first to make sure, okay, these are all the apps that are in use. This is where they're in use, and make sure that that is you have clarity of what your ecosystem looks like. You also want to have your governance in place before you give these people your people tools. You want to make sure that they know what they're getting, why they're getting it, and what to do with it and what not to do with it. Really need to have clear policies, the types of information that can be shared, how to share information safely with the tools. Or ideally, you can set that all up in the back end and you're like, okay, if you're in these two, this is our knowledge management, this is our document management, this is our task management. They're all safe and secure. Have at it, guys. Go for it. That's ideal case, but a lot of companies aren't quite there. So at least empower and give guidance and direction for your employees with policies. So the cultural readiness. So again, your IT team and everybody can be ready. Everything's safe. It's secure, ready to go. UAT tested, passed successfully. Now you have to be ready. Can people actually use it? When they show up to work, do they know what to do? Are they comfortable using it? Do they want to use it? So that cultural readiness is the other branch that really needs to be evaluated and taken into consideration. So you want to be clear with the employees, your teams about exactly what you're giving them and why and how they're expected to use it. There is room to be like, hey, we're going to open up some new toys for you guys. You know, maybe we'll run a pilot project and we can test these out, but maybe we're not rolling it out fully because we don't know. All of this is ambiguous. We're moving very, very, very quickly. So you don't want to have the expectation either that you're going to have everything perfectly mapped out. You can give these workflows and policies and teams just execute. There's going to be discussion. There's going to be stops and goes and reworking. As long as you know that that's going to happen and that you can kind of isolate it within a testing period, a testing project, you're going to be much more successful than if you just unleash tools. Your teams are probably going to react with surprise and frustration, and you're not going to see the productivity gains that you're probably hoping for with these tools. So you definitely want to avoid having any kind of mandates, no like AI or bust mandates. And I think all of that can be achieved if you're just thoughtful, intentional, and like I said, roll it out with a testing. We're going to try it, in this isolated, lower risk environment or project, however it is for your business first. So I think it's really, really important that companies not only take the technical readiness into consideration, but the cultural readiness too.
I really like that you included shadow IT in your software assessment, which when we were prepping for this, we were talking about, the differences between sort of a small or medium-sized business versus like an enterprise. And we know that, there are many large enterprises that should have really good governance, but they're unaware that people are just, they're accidentally using their personal ChatGPT account. They are, just playing with tools that, are accessible on the web, haven't been locked down yet, by IT. But I like that approach of like, hey, listen, we're going to do an evaluation. Like, you're not going to get punished. We just need to know what's going on.
Yes.
We know it's happening, and we want to build a plan based on the fact that we know it's happening. And actually, that's great. That's great that you're like that everyone's sort of experimenting, that they're running ahead. But yes, let's like put some guardrails on it. Let's not stifle that, but let's say, yeah, we might need to have some parameters. Might need to be a limited pilot. Maybe we just don't try and like make organization wide change for, thousands and thousands of employees. But at the same time, let's not have like these little grains of sand of everyone doing a different thing. And then we'll never sort of benefit from it as a whole. And I think it ties right into that cultural readiness, right? Which is like, listen, like this is about setting up some expectations both ways. And the thing that you said that resonated with me is like, do people know what to do with it when they come to work in the morning? And, I think I've been seeing a lot of organizations, they're making assumptions, there's a lot of judgment around folks who aren't picking up the tools. And, I see a lot of adoption charts where, and that people frown at, right? They're like, well, we announced the thing, but adoption's still flat. Like, why don't these people get it? But I think that cultural readiness and the change management aspect, the education and just the conversation, I think like goes hand in hand with that technical readiness. Is this actually are people going to use it?
Because that's exactly, you don't want to stifle your employees. You want them to feel empowered. You want them problem solving. And so, yeah, your business culture should kind of already be established of whether you're, let's turn things on and we maybe hopefully identify some power users, some people who, you think will be very successful and are willing and excited to try new tools, and you let them play with them and kind of figure some stuff out while you formalize your policies and your plans. And then you roll it out to the other teams that maybe move a little slower, maybe more a little more resistant. And you kind of try and bring everybody together through an excited curiosity and trying to move the business forward. I think your point of not taking a punitive approach or stance of any type is really, really key, because as soon as employees feel that there's going to be, something like negative stigma to them, maybe like, oh, they're not, they're not open to new ideas. Any whiff of punitive culture is going to make employees shut down. That's where employees just hide stuff. They just don't bring up issues, and you're really, really going to suffer and stall out. And we are seeing, the survey does show that like adoption is the top struggle that we're seeing. And it is often because it's a lack of clarity, and a lack of a two-way conversation, a five-way conversation. Everybody should be sharing ideas, sharing experiences. This stuff is very new, and how every company is going to use it is different. One especially different and unique thing for AI is that it is impacting all departments, all industries, kind of at the same time. So it doesn't really, sometimes you're like, oh, well, if you were an executive assistant, maybe you're going to get really hit with an LLM, the capabilities that, it's going to make your meeting notes way better, like great. But it's not just them, it's everybody.
Hmm.
It's also your project managers, it's your engineers, it's everybody now has these capabilities that they can use to augment their work and improve their work. And that's something we haven't seen quite before, other than just like moving everything digital onto a computer. And that kind of happened to everybody too.
Mhm.
So here again, your entire company is getting exposed and seeing AI in very, very different ways. And any kind of clarity that you can give people of here's how to safely and effectively use these tools, no punitive approach is going to, come to you. Really, really key.
I like that. The fact that it's so new that it has to be a dialogue. And that's kind of that's the whole point of that sort of cultural readiness. And also because I opened this whole podcast out with like the idea that maybe these people are buying software and don't know what they want from it. And maybe it's because they are either, yeah, like falling into the hype of it all and trying to, stay competitive. And sometimes it's because they feel like they have to tell people exactly what to do with it. Whereas I think what you're saying is tell them that give them some guardrails, but tell them that it's okay to like experiment and share. We're kind of figuring this out. And it's not necessarily like a mandate with no strategy. The strategy is let's, step by step, let's go through it. Like every department, everyone in the organization, it would be unrealistic to just overnight transform your entire business, every single aspect of it, just because of AI. It's really that, having that dialogue with everybody and setting expectations.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more that your technical readiness is tightened up, the more that you have a really great relationship, specifically for project management software, whether you have an existing tool that is rolling out AI features or you're looking for a new tool because they offer more AI features. If you have your technical readiness and you're like, okay, we've worked with the vendor, we've worked with our IT team, we know the data management is where we want it to be. We understand, this is going to be a safe. It's not really a sandbox, but it is kind of a sandbox. It's your production environment, but you know that it's safe and protected. And so you can then turn it on and let teams be like, okay, maybe by department, by project manager, by portfolio, depending on how, big or small your company is, you can be like, hey, we've turned everything on. It's all safe. You can't break anything. Roll it out with your teams as your team can. Your teams, your projects. Everything on the technical side is safe. Now you guys kind of help your team with the cultural readiness, and that can help a lot with adoption.
I really like that. I wondered if I could pick out something you said in there because we've been talking about data security and governance, and we've been talking about sort of like different sizes of businesses and different needs. I wonder if we can get into like maybe I'll just ask you like how does the data security and governance piece vary for different sizes of organizations, and do smaller and more nimble organizations like have a leg up over cautious enterprises or maybe not?
Yeah, so it's my favorite response is a mixed bag. So there's pluses and minuses and strengths and weaknesses for both sides of the spectrum. So your larger organizations are going to have strengths that there's a lot more data and a lot more historical data. The data is probably maintained, hopefully, a bit more. Your data hygiene policies are probably better. And you probably have a much better idea of what your ecosystem looks like and how often your teams use tools, and how they use tools. So you probably have a lot more of that foundational basis that can set up AI to be a bit more effective and successful for you when you're ready to adopt.
Hmm.
The other side of that is that smaller companies, while they might not have as much data and their data management policies aren't as mature, they can usually switch tools a lot faster. And so they can switch their project management tool much faster than, say an enterprise banking can. So you can try out new stuff, you can see what you want, you can quickly leverage the latest technologies while, bringing up the technical readiness and the data quality behind it. So there's definitely plus and minuses to both. And I think having a realistic understanding of those pros and cons and how to maneuver those is can be the successful path forward for both sides. So it's not that only AI is great for enterprises or only for small businesses. It's definitely very helpful and useful across the board. But what it looks like and the challenges that you're going to experience are going to be pretty different because of the size and maturity of that's out there.
Do you have any stories or examples from folks that you've talked to while putting together your report or elsewhere, sort of in the industry?
In the industry, you want my industry secrets? People
Yeah.
won't
Can you
open
dish?
up
Spill the
to
tea.
me
Come on.
if I air. If I air, will definitely share that the companies that, whether they're big, whether they're small, whatever size, whatever industry, wherever they are, culturally, that going back to making sure that you're kind of ready and that you understand that your teams want to do well for you. And so the more clear you can be with your expectations and providing them the guardrail rails, the more successful you're going to be. The companies that are just saying, do AI, we're checking daily that you logged in, we're checking usage, your managers are getting reports. That is absolutely happening. I have friends, I have family. I hear like they're getting these mandates. These mandates are out there. There are leaders that are unfortunately being taken more punitive. Like, hey, we just bought this tool for a lot of money, and every day we need 95% of everybody logged in for at least, whatever, 10 minutes a day. They all have their own individual quotas, and they're really, really sticking to those, like kind of trying to measure ROI and these KPIs like usage. And that's just, we're not ready for that yet. I don't know any company that's ready for that yet. We're still at the like, hey, let's make it safe and help you figure out how to be effective with it. Then we'll go into the like auditing and making sure that you're logging in. I think it's a good idea to do audits. I'm not saying don't audit usage, because that's one way that you can kind of find out like, oh, this whole team hasn't logged in. Let me check in with them and see maybe why. Or, oh, this team logged in and they were using it every single day for a month. And now the usage is dropping off. Let's check in and see why. It could be that maybe the tool, whatever it is, you need to check in and why. So I wouldn't use those audits for usage as you're like, this is how we're gauging ROI. Use it as how effective is our adoption.
That's a good, clear distinction, right? Between using data, to inform decisions and to guide folks versus using it to kind of punish and police. What comes to mind is like time tracking data. It comes up all the time in my community, especially for the folks working in agencies and consulting firms and professional services, where part of it is like, didn't log enough hours and, your utilization isn't high enough. Are you even valuable as a human?
Yep.
Versus going like, how are we spending our time and is that the right place to spend our time? And if we're not spending our time doing, the important things, then, what can be done? Like what is the reason and what can be done? And it's just so funny. And I'm thinking of like return to office mandates and things like that too. Like in some ways, humans and organizations are very bad at like sort of measuring impact and, bringing people along. There's always that sort of like, quota or like, like you get the stick if you don't, do this or that, these behaviors, even when the goal is like actually quite noble, right? It's like actually we want people to be able to like explore and use these tools. And yet it comes across as, yeah, we're going to punish you if you didn't log in today. Now I'm like, that what you said about that cultural readiness is like, you can see how important it is and you can see how important the data, and the government side of things is and how they play together because, you know, these things need to be in place before
You do.
things can actually move forward.
Yeah, and I think to your point about time tracking, we could have an entire episode on that, especially being a knowledge worker myself.
Mhm.
How do you possibly track? I don't know, not to jump into like a neuroscience, you know, branch, but so much work, valuable work is done on walks,
Mhm.
done that like diffuse I can't I think it's diffuse thinking. But you have the type of work where yes, I'm sitting and I'm typing and this is work. But the more valuable work, and I'm for me as especially as a knowledge worker and project managers everywhere, anybody who solves problems at work, the more that I can do the like, oh, I'm on a walk and I'm like kind of gelling the information that I have. And then that's when I have my aha moment, like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that's great. And then when I do sit down and I am typing and doing more traditional work, it's much faster and it's much higher quality. But we tend to only capture or want to capture the time that is in front of the computer typing. And then how do we capture that, the really truly useful time that was spent elsewhere. And I think that, yeah, RTO mandates, and there's a lot of things that sometimes companies can be a little maybe old school or rigid in their thinking and can limit that. And then they're not capturing. Then they're like, oh, well, you're not working enough. And you're like, what? I work all the time in my head. I never stop working.
Right.
Like that should count for something. Like the work you see that you like me produce is because of all this other time that's
Hmm.
like this like mushy time. And I really hope that that's something that AI could eventually help us with in the project management tools. That kind of it reminds me of like one of my more favorite or exciting aspects that I'm seeing AI impact project management tools specifically is resource allocation.
Mm.
So there's been AI automation more. There's definitely that's another. So a lot of AI powered tools are kind of more advanced automation, a lot of if then statements. And so that we've had set in CRM since like the 90s. So a lot of that's not necessarily new, but it's getting a lot more like turbocharged lately, which is fantastic. And so things like if you're making your project plan and you have your bucket of resources, and it's one of our main jobs as a project manager is to figure out the right recipe for the project to work. Who's got PTO coming up, who's got the skill set that I need, who do I want to upskill? And I don't mind them maybe taking a little longer with the tasks because they're going to be new, but I want to upskill them. Who do trust? I need stuff done really fast. So who do I trust that can do very experienced and get it done fast? There's all that. You got to put your recipe together. And we're seeing AI and machine learning and predictive capabilities come much, much better with that. And we're also seeing there's some tools out there that are taking in kind of that mushy time. So taking into account like the week after some before somebody goes on vacation, maybe give them not so high cognitively required tasks, maybe load them up with the tasks that are much more daily execution focused, and then they can go on their vacation, and then when they come back they're going to be pretty fresh, so you can give them those higher working whatever your project is, your higher risk stuff that takes a little more like deep work. It takes kind of all of that stuff into account. And also, some of them are getting really advanced where it's like, all right, this person works really well. For like 3 weeks, they're going to have deep individual work on my project. And then we're going to give them a break. We're going to give them a week of, higher level, tasks that aren't quite the same. Maybe they're more collaborative, whatever the case may be of the nature of your project. But taking that human side into account, which is exceptionally complicated and difficult for a project manager to make that perfect recipe with all those pieces. And the AI is definitely helping. And we're seeing more and more of that. And I'm really excited for all of us because it's so many project tasks and deadlines struggle because we don't really know how to take that stuff into account. And sometimes there's not always like the safety to acknowledge that we're humans, we're not machines. Machine can do the work that you tell it to, and you might fry the motherboard, but you're fine, you just buy another motherboard. It's fine. We don't want to do that with people. And so to have the most realistic expectations given to your stakeholders, given to your business owner, you need the most realistic timeline and work breakdown structure. And all of that needs to be as reflective as the capabilities and reality as possible. And I am definitely excited that AI could help us and is hopefully helping us get there.
I love that. I love resource allocation as an example because it is very squarely human and it shines a light on exactly what you're saying, right? Like humans are not machines. We were almost like, hopefully, all right, at this apex of like more traditional industrialization, where we kind of did make humans into machines and treated humans like machines because we needed that uniformity, right? Did that person punch in at 9 a.m. and did they punch out at 5 p.m.? Like that's how I can measure because that data I can understand. Everyone's working style and their mushy time and all that stuff. And like, I don't have enough capacity to deal with that. Let's not even think about that. So we've kind of like, I was going to say that AI is there's an opportunity to challenge our assumptions about work. But even more than that, I think it gives us an opportunity to challenge like what fallacies we've actually created around work, not just assumptions, but we've been like, that's too hard. It's too difficult. Let's just make everyone show up at the office at a certain time and clock their hours. We'll give them, we'll do annual performance reviews, and we'll ask them once a year how they're doing. What could be better. That's all we have capacity to do. And that resource allocation use case is just like such a good example of like how machines, frankly, can help us recognize our own humanity as we do our work, especially, knowledge workers and. But I just like, I'm so excited about that because it plugs all of this together, right? Where the sort of like, the data piece, the cultural awareness, the sort of use cases, and like, what exactly does this look like? What am I supposed to do with these tools, day in and day out when I show up at work? But also like, how is it actually transforming the work for us? Not just the task, but like the notion of work and like how we attack it. It's a really good one. I wonder if it leans us directly into the future, because I think as we prepared for this, we were talking a little bit about this sort of like leveling of the playing field, right? And you mentioned it earlier, right? That like it's changing and impacting, everyone in every department within an organization. And one of the things that you and I talked about is sort of that like AI becomes like a bit of an equalizer, something that kind of makes technology and or business like a little bit more inclusive and a little bit more accessible. Um, what are maybe some of the near term and longer term impacts that AI features, like, let's say integrated vibe coding or like, automation or agentic workflows? What sort of impacts will that have on the way work gets done and projects, but maybe just work in general?
It's super, super exciting. Okay, that was a lot. Let me go in the near term first. So, near term, we had kind of been seeing with the ChatGPT coming out and these LLMs coming out, the immediate thing is that project managers and non-techies can talk to computers in ways that computers understand better now, and it's so like it's much more frictionless than it used to be. And that is so exciting. Like, to me, I'm kind of like blown away with that. I can see like my parents now can like talk to an LLM and get some, work done that they've never been able to do with a computer before because they've fumbled around like with their smartphone and all kinds of things. But now they're like, these LLMs can even tolerate incomplete sentences for prompts. They can tolerate, misspellings in your prompt. They can tolerate a lot of incorrectness, where before, if you're having to write, lines of code and you're having to do, injection queries, you had to be precise, exactly precise. Now there's a lot more leeway with the natural language processing, NLP capabilities, kind of coming together with these large language models that are trained on vast, vast, vast amounts of data that is normal people speak. And we've not really had that before. So this is the first time we have computers that they know how to build and develop a lot of things, with machine learning on their own, and now a human can talk to them a much easier. So, yeah, a PM, a non-technical PM can go into their product management tool today. There's a lot of tools that today, and you can go and type in like, "Hey, take project A and give me a work breakdown structure that runs through the end of the year. Thanks, appreciate it." And it's like, "Okay." And it responds like a teammate. And it's like, "Here you go. Here's your information." You probably have to check it. We've all used these LLMs and they make a mistake. And then you're like, "Hey, you made a mistake there." And it's like, "Oh, you're so right. Thanks for pointing that out." Like, we've all been there. They have their own issues. But the fact that we can talk to a computer and get really effective outputs, we can build workflows. It's taking that no code, low code trend that we've been seeing for a very long time and just like injecting it with ease that we've not ever seen before. And that is definitely, definitely exciting. And I would say that that's the near term that I definitely want to bring up. It brings up red flags that I'm seeing
Hmm.
for this. Just what I'm saying, that this colloquial talking to computers like a teammate, there's a lot of issues that I'm seeing, that we might be relying on emergent capabilities of these tools. And we're not really, the marketing isn't clear that these are emergent capabilities. there's definitely a bit of like muddling of what these tools specifically. I'm going to narrow in on LLMs because they are the biggest near-term impact. We'll get to the other ones for the longer term in a minute. But the near term is these LLMs. We're all using them. Every project manager I know is using them, especially to summarize information and gather data points, analyze data points, and all of that is emergent capabilities. And that is not clear right
Mm-hmm.
now. The LLMs are intended to generate text or images in a human-like form. They have their, they're statistically predicting word order based
Mm-hmm.
on the vast amounts of information that it has. It doesn't know what summarize means. It doesn't even know what the word summarize means. You
Mm-hmm.
can really break it down. Like, I'm no data scientist and I'm no, so don't come at me, anybody who's out there like building their own LLMs. But depending on your token, like it can break down your word, like we'll take disconnect. Disconnect, you're like, "Oh, I know what that means. I got it. That's an obvious one. There's a disconnect. There isn't a disconnect. I got it." An LLM doesn't know what disconnect is. It's very likely broken that down into 3 tokens: dis, con, and nect. And it's using those 3 tokens. So taking the first one, dis, it's using that for discount. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's like, it doesn't know what dis means. In con, like it doesn't know. It's using that in all sorts. Any other words that have con, it's that same token getting. So if that makes sense, there's a huge disconnect between how even an LLM understands the word disconnect and that tokenization of very, very small chunk. That's where I see like my background in like in English literature and
Mm-hmm.
studying language. That's where I see this come in of like, I see where it gets that all mixed up. And that has compounding effects when, let's say, okay, I brought this up very theoretical. Let me ground this down like into an example. So you're a project manager and you are getting ready to do a big status update with the business owner. So you need to gather all of the statuses from everywhere that they come at you from. So you're going to pull them from your PM tool. You probably, I don't know if you're a fan of voice notes. I send a lot of voice notes. I like them. There are companies out there that are giving people tools to like text to voice dictate updates, emails, whatnot. So let's say you've got a couple voice memos, the updates from your tool, and you're going to put these all together into an LLM and be like, help me understand what's going on so that I can give the full status to the business owner that I'm meeting with. That all sounds great. And we are being told that it's fantastic at that by other people, and I am telling you it is not fantastic at that.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of really big issues that can happen. In general, the LLMs are transforming the information that you're giving, and they tend to take out a lot of emotional words. They tend to take out a lot of sense of urgency. They take out a lot of nuance. Sometimes they just take out entire sections of what you've asked it to look at. And so it will almost always soften the language, remove those emotional cues. So, an example, let's say you've got your voice memo is your boss saying that, the new vendor contract that you're waiting on is stuck in legal. He's had trouble, getting a hold of them. You can't move forward until legal, you know, response. And he's not feeling good about it. That'll be the voice note. And then your AI summary, and you'll feed that into the LLM. But then in the status report that it gives you, it'll say, vendor contract is in final stages.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not incorrect. Like, it is in the final stages, but it's a tension-filled, frustrating final stage. And you're going to miss that. You might not even actually listen to the voice memo because you're giving the transcript to the LLM and
Mm-hmm.
you're expecting it to manage that. So you might even miss all of that frustration. So then you're not going to share that with the business owner, and you're not going to follow up with your boss, and you're not going to try and unblock. You're just going to be like, "Oh, it's in the final stages. Cool." And that happens a lot. And so you really, really got to watch out for that. It's going to always soften your language. It's going to hallucinate. Hallucination rates are still very, very high, even in proprietary systems that companies are doing a fantastic job monitoring and making sure that, they're adjusting for model drift and all the technical capabilities, right? But PMs need to know that the odds of that happening are very, very high, and it's only going to come back to them. So these tools don't actually know what summarize means. It's just trying to give you what it thinks it wants. And so, yeah, we need to know that, again, I can't like stress this enough. It's softening language. It's
Mhm.
making it seem like it's misrepresenting a lot of stuff. And that could bite you in the butt. I know it's biting some of us in the butt. I hear about it. I hear about it.
That is fascinating. I hadn't really thought about it too hard in terms of like removing the emotional content and what impact that might have. And I mean, just to nerd out on language and linguistics a bit, there's a difference between being taught language and training on language data. And these LLMs are so convincing, right? We were talking about leveling the playing field, right? Everyone's kind of like, oh, okay, so it's as smart as a human because it responds like a human would. And yeah, it makes mistakes like a human would, but basically it's a human. But it's not. And you can see where the hallucinations, come from token by token, right? Like process by process, easily sent down, the wrong path based on maybe limited information, limited training, and just context. But then also that emotional content, right? We haven't cracked the nut on that. What you're saying is like a lot of a project manager's role is picking up on nuance or funneling emotion, redirecting emotion. And sure, we do summarize, right? As in, like, maybe shorten some things down, but we also transform some of that emotion along the way to say, okay, well, listen, I need to shield my team from a bit of, this
Yep.
person's angst, but also they need to know that it's urgent and that there's tension. And that's going to help us sort of get to the goal. And it's just so interesting that, yeah, you're like, okay, project management software that I bought that has all the AI features in it. I guess I'll just dump all these files and you tell me, what the status is. And that whole like emotional bit could be completely missing. That is
Yeah.
terrifying, fascinating, and like,
What
gosh,
do we need?
like what an interesting what an interesting challenge ahead of us, I guess. I like your point that this is emergent, right? It's not perfect yet. This isn't the end, it's the beginning. And we do need to kind of like factor that in to the way
Yeah,
we work.
absolutely. I think one way you can kind of maybe account or limit that specifically for product managers, because like you said, we're held accountable. If you miss the nuance, if you miss the frustration,
Mhm.
and you don't address it, that's you're held accountable for that. And so we all know, like, make sure you're actually checking all the inputs, that you're doing all of that. We know it. I don't think it's happening quite enough because there's so much marketing messaging coming at us that these tools are good at this.
Mhm.
And there's not this clarity that these are emergent capabilities. If you stick to the generating aspect, you're probably going to be a bit safer. Or if you're in a company that has a very, very advanced, dedicated team that has not only the LLM trained on a huge database and trained very effectively, but they also are putting in a lot of if then statements. There are definitely ways that you can improve the reliability. But there's also the fact that these are still black box systems. And even the people that are designing them have come out being like, yeah, we're not sure why it actually can summarize text.
Mhm.
We're
Mhm.
not sure why it can do that. And you're like, "Oh gosh, that's terrifying to me." I know it's not terrifying to everybody, and that's great, but that's scary to me. And so I think when you see features, in your PM tool of like the smart suggestions, those aren't so scary. If you're gathering user requirements and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm in my work ticket, and it has a little prompt of like, hey, kind of maybe getting rid of that like blank page anxiety that
Yeah.
we often can have.
Mhm.
I think it's fantastic for that. Like, generate the first draft. That's kind of my thinking with the LLMs is I try to remember that they're generative AI. So I'm just going to have it generate a first draft,
Mhm.
whatever I'm working on. And they're very effective and pretty good for that. Anything beyond that capability, do remember that those are emergent capabilities. They're not tested and proven. We don't really know even why they're working like that. And so, yeah, to be a little careful, but definitely don't be scared, especially like blank page anxiety is way worse than, a hallucination of an AI. At least that gets the ball going. At least that helps you move forward. So definitely don't be scared of that. but I think people do need to be aware of. And I think it, like I said, I think I have a kind of unique perspective with my language and linguistics background, and I use AI tools all day, every day. And we study and research this. And I've worked on a lot of IT teams, and I know kind of the technical side of it. So it's definitely kind of a unique perspective that I hope, and I hope people kind of don't be scared, but know that we don't fully know how these things are working. I would not rely on it for your full status report. It can help you. I really liked your example of like, you can write out maybe your status report and be like, all right, help me tailor this to the business owner
Hmm.
and then tailor this information to my team. Because yeah, both those groups need different information, different types of information, different aspects of the information, and it can help you with that. But don't rely on it fully and don't trust it fully. Absolutely do not trust it.
It's
And the other thing too is they're so convincing because were designed to be convincing. If you showed up and you use a LLM and it, had an attitude, or you knew that it was wrong, or it admitted, "Oh, I don't know," you're probably not gonna use it
Mhm.
again. And that's the opposite of what is desired. So it sounds convincing on purpose, but know that that's just kind of, it's like getting you to use it, tactic, not because it actually knows and can do what you're asking it to do.
As we go through this, it's becoming obvious why adoption was one of the top challenges in your report because, we're coming down to like these mandates of just do AI. There's pressure everywhere. People aren't sure, what they're expected to do with it when they're at work. That little voice in their head is going like, well, you probably shouldn't have to do that. Just dump all those files into the LLM. And like, that's probably what people expect of you. And we're not necessarily having that dialogue all the time. The education, training ourselves about how the technology works and what we do and don't know about it and how we guide, how we use it today. I wondered if we could maybe look a bit deeper into the future. We're talking about some near-term stuff. We're talking about generative AI, but I think still that looming elephant in the room over the past, few months has been like agentic AI. Agentic features are making their way into project management software. Where does that take? Where does that take us? And like, what does it mean for us in the future? Future us.
Future us. Yeah. So I'm definitely very, very excited about future us. Current us, the little chaotic. Future us, I'm really excited for. I think agentic AI, sort of to kind of level set what that means. It means a lot of things to a lot of different people. So within your organization, your IT team hopefully is defining that for you. And the vendor, if they're selling agentic AI, that they're defining what that actually means for you. In general, we're not quite there. So if you are getting marketed that, hey, we've got agentic AI fully ready to go, I would be very, very, very critical of that offering and really dive into the technical aspects of that. We're not there yet. So this agentic AI fully sits in the like longer near term. It's not here yet. Anyway, agentic AI is going to be where the system can kind of make decisions and execute tasks at a pretty complicated flow. Like ideally, we would like to be able to be like, hey, book me a family vacation, you know, to Greece in October. And then it can check your calendars, the calendars of everybody that you want to invite, and negotiate the best rates for a car rental, find the best flights, go and do all of that, act as like your personal agent and go and make all those decisions for you, and then come back and be like, all right, here's your trip. It's done. And that is exciting. And I hope we get there someday. And that is kind of the goal that we're looking at. I think things like the NLP, the natural language processing, this ability of non-techies to be able to talk to computers and do no code and low code automations. Even now, we can see that happening. We can build out our workflows now, and that's going to hopefully cross systems. So right now, maybe your PM tool, you can build your workflow, but it doesn't carry across, likely it doesn't carry across too complicated across your CRM and across your email, your calendar, et cetera, et cetera. But it will continue to increase those capabilities, and that's where we're going to get closer to agentic AI. So you're going to be able to say, hey, like I said, that example, book my family vacation to Greece in October. Now, that prompt that I just said is also kind of what vibe coding is. And vibe coding is this like new-ish thing. Like if you're not a developer, you might not have heard this. And if you are on a like really, really new team, or I should say a new team using these tools, you might be vibe coding and not knowing. But
Hmm.
anyway, vibe coding, just to level set, is using plain language as your prompt, and then the computer is the one that's doing the actual building of what the logic needs to be. So it's not vibe coding like, "Oh, I'm gonna make a cool vibe," or like, "Oh, I'm in a good mood. This is gonna be so fun," or "I want the output to be, really like hipster cool." It's not that kind of vibe. It's vibe coding is definitely more just using your plain language. "Hey, book me a trip." But then the amount of logic that is behind something so simple as that is insanely complex.
Hmm.
Out most everybody here has booked a family vacation. We know it is insane, and so to think
Hmm.
that we can just, like, pass that off to somebody else, to a computer is exciting, but also, it's gonna be fraught with issues, and it's really complicated stuff. So, we'll see that. It's gonna have the same risks because, again, if you're vibe coding, even now we're seeing this issue with vibe coding. The same words don't always mean the same to everybody,
Hmm.
and so you can be like, "Oh, book me a family vacation," and even if you do specify the 4 people you want invited, the AI can't go and actually, like, confirm that those 4 people want to go, that they
Right.
want to do that. There's so much connective tissue that gets lost, and nuance that gets lost, and emotions that get lost, that it's gonna feel good that it, performed the task and gave you the output at the immediacy, but when you go and you go on that family vacation that AI booked for you, whew, you might have an interesting time. You might not know what's coming up.
It's like
It
getting in a
really
Waymo today, right? It's like a bit of a gamble. It's like kind of proven, but it's like a bit of a gamble.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely, and there's a lot of bias, there's things that can be unexpected. Let's say I use my AI that kind of knows me, it knows my
Hmm.
preferences, it knows who I am, and I'm the one that does the family vacation, and I'm like, "All right, book it." And then it's probably gonna it's gonna, like, book a lot of, like, history museums, it's gonna book, modern art museums. It's going to be a tinge to me,
Right.
like, "Hey guys, we're gonna go to the train museum now." I'm the only one that wants to do those things. The family doesn't want to do that, but the AI wants to make me happy. So there's
Hmm.
so much of that that goes in, and we're just gonna have to keep communication going. And again, it comes all back to the like questioning, challenging, knowing these things aren't perfect, knowing that all the marketing messaging you're hearing, take it with a grain of salt, ask deeper questions, and really know that these tools, I think, like I said earlier, the shine is kind of starting to like come off, and
Hmm.
everybody's like, "Oh, it's great at telling my kid bedtime stories, but yeah, it kinda messed up my status report, and it did, make me look like I was out of touch with my project because
Hmm.
I over-relied and I outsourced some of my thinking, or I outsourced some of my problem solving to it, and now I'm being held accountable for that. So yeah, it's definitely needs to be a continuous challenging dialogue.
It's a really interesting point about, yeah, like the agentic stuff is, we're not there yet. And I think, a lot of folks might say, actually, we are. But I think everyone would agree it's early days. And I like that it's not necessarily like the progression of the technology. Like, I think the other thing you're saying is it's also how we train it and how we give it context to begin with, because like that in itself is the art. And, right now it's hard for us to, you know, um, trust it to make decisions about the meaning of a word, not because, it doesn't, well, I mean, yes, it doesn't understand it. We also haven't necessarily trained it with like, all of the nuance that comes along with human communication. And to go from that decision to, deciding how to negotiate rates on Trivago is like, they're leaps. But the potential is there. I think it's doing a great job of painting a picture of how work will be, in 5-10 years. It's messy right now, but it is making space for, some of the mushy ways that we work. And at the end of the day, to bring it all back, right? There's pressure. There's pressure because there's economic investment happening, at, the infrastructure level, at the government level, and that's trickling down to, pretty intense investments at a corporate level, at a team level. And that is, the pressure is trickling down for the users to use it, to figure out how to use it, to, log in every day and try something and share your knowledge. But in order for all of that to work, it's got to have the right guardrails. It's got to have the data and privacy and security in place. And it also needs, the human parameters, like what is expected of us, what are we supposed to do with this, and how can we support one another, like as a dialogue to kind of come out the other side. That's
Exactly.
probably bigger than project management software. We started in project management software, but I actually loved where we went. It is a little bit of a microcosm for work, right? Projects, and the software that we use. This has been
And then
incredible.
I think project managers they're one of those roles that attracts people who tend to think very dynamically. They like to think big picture and small picture, and that they often have a lot of that connective tissue of like, yeah, I problem solve this personal issue this way, and I'm going to come and take this into my work. I think PMs are exceptionally good at that, and not a lot of roles in business work that well. So hopefully they also appreciate that, yeah, like we can talk about, the linguistics and the macroeconomics, but that does all impact how you use these tools. Hopefully it deepens your understanding of what you're seeing in these tools. Like your day to day, you show up and you're like, why did it mess that up? Like, why
Hmm.
did it totally skip what I asked it to do? It helped me like why did it do that? Hopefully conversations like this and information like this help everybody understand a little bit maybe why they're seeing that and why they're right to question it and what to do about it.
Lovely call out that project managers are good at that. Olivia, thanks so much for spending the time with me today. I had a blast. Always great having you on the show. I mentioned at the top that you've just published your report, Capterra's 2025 Project Management Software Trend Survey. Where can people go to find out about it?
Absolutely. It is posted on capterra.com. You can check it out there. Also, you can follow me on LinkedIn, Olivia Montgomery. I try to post my research regularly, my thoughts and ideas, insights there regularly. So yeah, check it out.
Awesome. Love that. I'll include the links in the show notes as well. And Olivia, thank you again. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much.